highly religious dude, trust like, oh, you're in the stake presidency, then of course it must be scriptural. Well, I trust the wrong guy. Within 2 weeks, you've taken over $2 million.
What do you get when you mix losing $20 million at 22 years old, 2 bankruptcies, living in your truck for a year, and an obsession with hidden doors? You get Murphy Door, a company that rose from rock bottom to on track to do $50 million this year. This isn't your typical entrepreneur story. Jeremy Barker is scrappy, full of hot takes, and has an absolutely wild story.
I put 50,000 in and I picked up 15 million. Have you ever made 20 million in a year? How are you supposed to teach me anything? You don't even know anything. I'm rich. You're not rich. I'm not listening to you. Are you crazy? Like 100,000 a year? Don't you live in your car? Yeah, I live in my car. Why am I such a loser? The secret to life is the sooner you can.
Utah has the #1 economic outlook in the country 17 years running. It's consistently ranked as one of the top 10 places to live, and people are moving here in droves. Yet most dismiss Utah as ski slopes, religious stereotypes, and awkward reality TV. This podcast pulls back the curtain on the Utah hidden in plain sight, the untold stories behind our most iconic businesses, and our incredible entrepreneurial spirit. Whether you're a local looking for your next favorite spot, an entrepreneur looking for hard-won wisdom, or you're just Utah curious, these are the stories you won't hear anywhere else. This is UtahPreneur. Mr. Jeremy Barker, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for coming and setting this fancy place up. I appreciate you.
Where are we? Tell us about the building we're in. We're right next to Ogden Hinckley Airport. Hill Air Force Base is behind us.
Yeah. Such
a cool kind of like annex location you've got here at Barker Commons.
Yeah, kind of a unique deal. So this is our new corporate office that we bought it about, I guess it's been 2 years now. The weird place is this used to be a huge call center with 1,200 people working. And I worked for the fire department in this district. So we used to come here literally every day on seizures or pregnancies or whatever they said they were having that day to not have to work. And to think that there would be a time when you were a firefighter that you were going to be buying the whole complex was just different, right? Because I was making sub $800 every 2 weeks. And it was just so far outside walking into this place when this place is huge. And the next thing you know, it's got your brand on it.
Yeah, so cool. And you said you had some kind of studio at the mall as well?
Yeah, so we have our production studio for all the social media stuff that people are watching.
But you're like building an entire set just to film a 60-second clip on.
And then we tear it down and put a new one in. And then we tear it down and put a new one in. Like the last one I was just telling you about was the Minecraft one. And so, for example, we did that Harry Potter one we also discussed. That got 43 million views with average watch time of about 21 seconds. If I was to do that on like any kind of news media platform, it would cost me upwards of around $9 to $10 million to do. So I figure $150,000 isn't that big a deal. It is a huge deal. So don't underestimate the $150,000. Although if you were going to do that on standard platforms, it would cost you a lot more. And by the way, those views are all organic views.
Well, going back to this building we're in, when you walk in, it's very distinctive. I'm like, okay, this is a cool place to work. We've got like custom doors, custom floor. You know, the walls are not corporate feeling. Like, how do you think about the environment that you have your team in? And
yeah, so I didn't want it to feel like a job. Like every entrepreneur, I think they want to love, you want your employees to love where they work. And I also want them to feel like that they're wanting to work for the right reasons, not because they have to. Even during COVID and every piece, we are absolutely never work from home. Like the whole idea of a company is exactly what that means, in the company of others. Like we are a group of people marching towards the same mission with a goal to make our products better and to improve your personal life, professional life, and financial life. We do lunches one Friday a month where all the company gets together and they get to know that lady's the one that always makes me redo stuff. And I hate that lady. I'm like, her name's Beth. And by the way, she's got kids, and you know what? You're going to go cook with her and you have to go grocery shopping and you're going to learn about each other, that you're not just the jerk in the paint booth that's never painting something right. So Beth has to be ornery to you back. Like, so we kind of pulled that from the fire world. It was hugely costly to our business. I mean, if you think about what a lunch costs us when we're producing a door every 6 minutes and the average ticket's around $2,080, and you take a lunch for 2 hours, you got 120 minutes, that's 20 units times 2,080. Wow. But you're talking about $42,000 in actual throughput at revenue that you're missing out on, plus the 100 people that you're feeding and their hourly wage, because we pay them during the whole thing. right? So you're talking about a $50,000 lunch once a month.
Wow.
And I know that sounds absurd, everybody, but I promise you that's why you're getting what we get. The interpersonal relationships inside the company is why we're doing
The investment
so
pays
well.
off.
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
It's like, how could you forego that in your company?
Going back to the beginning of your journey, you made and lost $20 million in
Before I
about
was
4
22.
years before you were 22, right?
Yeah.
Take me back to you're 18, your first business idea, your first $60,000 in a weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And then how did you lose it all?
Initially, I did, just like everybody else. I went to Viewmont High in Bountiful, Utah, went to Centerville Junior, and my mom was always entrepreneurial, and my dad was a stockbroker, and some stuff hit the fan, and we went from having money to no money in the crash of '87. When I was a kid, I had no understanding or appreciation of money. Like if I got an A, I got a freaking go-kart kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so like, how can you relate? Like, I want that. Okay, you can have it. To then all of a sudden, I want that. I'm like, well, you can't have that, nor dinner. I'm like, what the frick? Like, how did this pivot so much? It was literally from money to a church welfare really, really fast.
Wow.
The reason I think I wanted to go all the way back to that is then I realized the importance of money. However, I never thought that I would do anything but white collar work because blue collar work sounded awful. I went to the University of Utah for a few months and I was doing freight. So it was like $7.50. And then I get a job offer for $6.13 an hour. That was like a 20% pay deduction.
Yeah.
And I thought this was supposed to be a career. So I'm like, well, we got to figure out something else. Went into construction, which by the way, I sucked. And I wasn't a construction guy. I did construction for a year on the road. So when I came back, my neighbor asked to build a shed for him. I'm like, oh, I could frame a shed. Like I did some framing inside some Smiths and so forth. I can do that. So I started putting a shed together and I went down to Tough Shed had 2 or 3 locations at the time. And I just kind of copied it. Like, I'll just do that. But I noticed in their displays, every single shed door had twisted open because they'd use 2x4s to kind of give some that sheet that's the door. And so I'm like, man, why don't we just do like a tube steel frame on the inside and then that'll stay straight forever because it won't follow the 2x4. I did that. And then I built that neighbor and a couple other neighbors some sheds. I'm like, hey, this isn't a bad gig. It's paying $1,500 to $2,000. It takes me a week to do it by myself. What a great job. And my net income was about 50%. I was marking it up double my cost of goods sold and not taking into consideration my car and gas and all the other crap that you don't know about. And I thought, well, maybe I'll sell more. And my mom had always done trade shows and like sell stuff at the state fair and dolls and all that. So I'm like, maybe I'll put a couple sheds up at the state fair and see what I could sell. So during that 10 days, we sold just over $60,000 worth of sheds in 10 days. I'm like, wait a second. I don't need to go to school to make 60 grand a year. I did it in 10 days. Again, not net. In my heart, I just made 60 grand. So I'd taken a 50% deposit. And that's where the $30,000 came down to go buy my brand spanking new Dodge Ram diesel. Like literally that week, I'm like, look, I'm rich. I'm going to go buy a pickup. Whoa, did that put me in?
And you're still 18 at this point?
I'm still, I just barely. So I sold the 60,000, ran it all in, didn't know anything about marketing or anything other than the state fair, finished those sheds, and I'm self-employed at the time. By the way, got ticketed for manufacturing in a residential neighborhood, contracting without a license, no contractor insurance, no nothing. Like as I was building these shed walls in my mom's driveway, having lumber delivered to her driveway.
Did someone report you?
Oh yeah, like everybody. I had the city inspector show up like, dude, you're manufacturing without a license or manufacturing in a residential neighborhood. That's a ticket. Then they caught me building a shed in the neighbor's house. And he's like, oh, you're contracting without a license. That's a ticket. I'm like, son of a bee, there's all these rules about business. Where do I find out the rules? There's no rule book. Like you just have to know. And like at the time, yes, it was before the internet. So I learned it the hard way through citations. Right. Yeah. And after
quick aside, we've interviewed World's Best Corn Dogs, if you know them, and Beehive Meals, which is just around the corner from here. They're on the other side of Hill Air Force Base. Both of them, same exact story. She sells $10,000 in a weekend of frozen freezer meals. Yeah. And they're like, you need a license. She's like, oh, I better figure that out. Goes and gets it done. The guy's selling corn dogs on the side of the road. Health department shows up. He's like, oh, it's all right, isn't it? It's a common trait of entrepreneurs in Utah. We just go for it and then pay the fees. Like I have this a lot. I still do it today. Go ahead and find me, whatever. Yeah. But that's just, I mean, I'm not Paul Alstrom. He's a great dude, by the way. Love that man. Nail it and scale it author. I'm the complete opposite. However, I'm like scale it, then nail it. Like we'll figure out the rules and regulations later. Let's just roll it out. Like, why not? I'm that guy. I'm like,
if we're not selling stuff when the idea hits, even before we build a test product, I'm like, I get frustrated. I'm like, just see if people want to buy the idea and then we'll figure it out.
Yep.
So that's a problem for me. And we're getting better at it, by the way, now that we have engineers in my disposal and 3D printers and machine and manufacturing.
Some liability, you know, kind of get
huge liability. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's a little more discipline, but at the same time, if I could do that, I would do that every single day. But so then I get that going, and then here comes winter. And guess what? You don't have any other form of marketing. So here I am thinking I have this little shed. I've rented a little location. I have these other things going on. I'm like, oh crap, do I have to wait till September for the state fair again to sell another shed? This is problematic. So then you learn about the yellow pages and you learn about all these other things. It grew really quick. And by the way, luckily enough, during the spike of those sheds I bought from the fair, I'd been going back and forth to Home Depot, which, by the way, in my heart was the only Home Depot on the planet, the 21st South and 3rd West, because there's nothing that exists outside of my world, right? So there's just the Home Depot. They said, hey, why don't you build our sheds for us? And I said, okay, you can do that, whatever. And next thing you know, they sent me this banker's box of books of like all these things that I needed to do. I'm like, who the heck do these guys think they are sending me all these books? They're buying from me. Yeah. Like I'm the guy they're buying from. Why do I have to fill out your paperwork? You should be filling out my paperwork. Well, they had 500 stores or so at the time. So I was working with their merchant, and next thing you know, I'm trying to figure out how to supply 500 stores at 19 years old, like probably their youngest vendor at the time. I'm not 100%, but I would guess, if not one of the youngest. And then they put a purchase order in. And by the way, I told them, hey, I can't do 500 stores. We're going to do it by region. So Southwest region, and then we'll take it down that way.
Sure.
And, I told the merchant, I said, dude, it's just me and another kid building these sheds. Like, I can't do that. And by the way, I can't afford to put displays in all these stores. Like, I have really no money. It's post this, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for all these displays. And even more importantly, they were hanging their displays on the wall back in the day. So they were like a house style and a barn style. And it was just the face of the barn. And they said, I want that style or that style. And I'm like, well, that's the dumbest idea I've ever had, or I've ever seen, because how are you supposed to see my metal frame door, which is why they were buying my door or my shed. And I'm like, well, why would you do that? So I ended up having to convince Home Depot to not display their sheds on the wall and to really show them out in the lawn and garden department, which is kind of my favorite thing about that business. Is now whenever I go to a Home Depot store and I see that all the sheds are in the lawn and garden department, it's because I was 18, 19 and broke, and they couldn't afford. I really sold them it was the right idea. I'm like, it's dumb to put it on the wall. 1, 2, I can't afford to do it. So I convinced them to buy all my displays and put them in front of all their stores in the lawn and garden department.
Amazing.
You can, even at 19 years old, if you have the right idea and it makes sense. These guys are common sense people. They will, again, take a believable, factual data point and apply it. It's just harder than you think, and it takes way longer than you think, just like everything else. And so, again, in 93, automation wasn't really the thing, but what another way is creative thinking, right? So I noticed that every wall on every building was the same. I mean, that doesn't take a genius, right? You're going to do 2 foot on center, and then the windows that you're using are this. So I ended up building giant jig tables. And then what we did, and then I bought a truss press. And then I just ended up having units of 2x4s, and we could literally frame a 10 by 12 shed, painted, shingled, complete in 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Done, start to finish. So that was per line. So we could do one every 2.5 hours per line. So the first, they go across the framing table, it'd take them around 15 to 16 minutes to frame the building. And then they'd just take the gallon of paint, pour it across the wall, smear it. And that would take about 30 minutes to dry in the summer. Then they'd stand it up and then roll the trusses and sheet it and shingle the roof, hang the door and pop the trim. And then it was just one after the other, after the other.
Laying the foundation for a Murphy door.
Right. Yeah. That's how we did it. And then I just took that model, kind of like the McDonald's ideas, like let's build this one really, really good. And then we can take it to the next city and just replicate it. Exact same thing. And we actually built the jigs in Utah and shipped them down there, and then they just dropped off and they were ready to go. Wow. And the cool thing with the shed business, it's an amazing business, by the way, is it's 2x4s and sheeting and shingles. Like you can really start this business anywhere at any time, and it's a really lucrative business. It really is. Like I'm 21, just starting to drink, and 22, I'm like ready to party. Now I have money, and I was doing any kind of party I could find. Like, is it in New Orleans? Is it in New York? Is it in Puerto Penasco, Mexico? Yeah. Like, and yes, I'll bring all my friends. Yes, I'll pay for all of you. Okay. Well, and then summer, it's great. You can afford it in the summer if you're stealing your cash flow.
Yeah.
But when winter hits and then you've realized you've burned up all the money and you still have obligations, it becomes problematic. And one of the things that I've learned is the things that made me stick my head in the sand when I was 21, 22, when everything started to disengage and discombobulate. And then again, I want to add one more piece into that is I went and looked for a partner. Like I thought, well, I'll franchise this out and I'll sell my Phoenix operation or Vegas operation, whatever, and I'll franchise this. I had no idea of franchise on my heart. It was like, I'll sell you Frontier Shit Las Vegas or Phoenix, and then I'll just not have it. And then you just can have it and I'll make a little money off you. I didn't know there's laws that are tied back into it. So another naivety piece. Well, I trusted the wrong guy. He bought into the shed place. He took the Phoenix operation. We sold it for a couple million. He'd given me a $20,000 check. In the meantime, highly religious dude from Ogden, trust, like I grown up in Centerville, like, oh, you're in the stake presidency, then of course it must be scriptural. Like you never break any rules and you're 100% honest.
Yeah.
Not the case. Anybody hiding behind their garments, and I'm not saying they're not, but if they advertise it, then you probably ought to check it. Within 2 weeks, he'd collected over $2 million from Home Depot, and he had opened a bank account at Zions Bank under, it was called the Old Frontier Shed Company. And my account at Zions Bank was Frontier Shed Company. Well, they took the check. And so just to kind of give you anybody that ever gets into this scenario, I should have just gone right back to the bank and said, hey, you deposit that in the wrong account. That's made to Frontier Shed Company, not Old Frontier Shed Company. Give me my money back. Well, I was scared. I didn't know that. So I went and found an attorney, and the attorney says, oh, dude, don't just go do that. Like, we could sue this guy. He's got lots of money. He was an Inc. Entrepreneur of the Year. Like, let's wring his neck. I'm like, okay. So he goes, we'll sue him for damages. We could probably get 10 million. Okay. So rather than doing something like, I was living in the rearview mirror thinking like, I'm going to get even, blah, blah, blah. Like we spend a lot of time there sometimes, like you wronged me. I'm going to make you pay the price. Yeah. That is so much wasted energy, right? Like if I would have just gone to the bank, got my money back and let bygones be bygones, guess what? It wouldn't have ever got here. So instead I decided I'll pay my attorney, you know, 5, 10, 20,000 a month to fight this battle. In the meantime, he took 2 million out of my receivables, right? And then on top of that, I'm still trying to pay the wood that was paid for on top of all the customers that have paid D2C cash. Wow. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a bad deal. Well, I spent about 15 months paying my attorney and I just ran out of money and I just gave up. And here's the difference is when I say what made me fold back then is really a problem that lands across my desk every day. It's just we're proactive with it. Like if we have bad news and this guy's going bankrupt or this is happening, I don't dwell. Like it's like, okay, well, whatever. Move on. Yeah. Are you going to sue? We have never sued anyone at Murphy Door, ever. We don't. I'm not chasing rearview mirror stuff. Yeah. Not that I won't. I just don't want to. And if there's other ways to do it, like how about this weird thing that you could do called communicate? It's really weird. Like we could just call and say, hey, by the way, I don't have any money, Brian. I can't pay you this week. I know that you thought you were getting paid Friday. I don't have it. I misspent the money and I'm really sorry, but I don't want you to go broke. And I'll call you every Friday and let you know if we're making any progress on your money. I couldn't do it. I was 22 years old and I'm just sticking my head in the sand because here's the other problem. I was so freaking prideful. It was really hard to have someone that was elder than me. And I don't mean elderly, but someone that's older and say, hey, here's some advice. I'm like, dude, you're freaking really? Have you ever made 20 million in a year? Like, how are you supposed to teach me anything? You don't even know anything. Yeah. I'm rich. You're not rich. I'm not listening to you. That was my attitude at 20, right? Or 22 years old. Like no one's going to teach me nothing. And even now at 50, I wish I had a tattoo on my forehead that said, I don't know, but I'll find out. I'll go learn and ask every single person that I possibly can their advice and how they would navigate it if it gets hard. Like, how do I, even if it comes down to have a hard conversation with you, now it's like, it's no big deal. Yeah. Like we don't have those problems. And thank goodness.
Okay. So you're 22, you get screwed over by this person that you looked up to in your life. You've made $20 million and you're bankrupt. You're actually broke. Like, are you in debt?
No, because I filed bankruptcy. Okay. Yeah. So I was in huge debt. I think I filed for 400,000. Wow. So at the time, that's a lot, especially when you're looking at jobs you're paying $750 an hour. You're like, ooh, I'm never going to be able to do that. Go back to fire that pays $650 or whatever, $613. So at the time, again, because of pride, I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get the heck out of freaking Utah. Like, because everybody's judging me in my heart. Probably not for real.
Yeah.
But because I couldn't look at any of my friends that I took everywhere, they're like, oh, what a loser. He ran that place bankrupt. I knew he'd go bankrupt. What a loser, right? I get those comments from other 20-year-olds that never had tried or ever experienced what we'd experienced. So I decided I'm just going to get in my pickup and I'm going to leave and I'm just going to live in my car. So I was super suicidal, super depressed, super all those things. Like I attempted suicide on 2 different occasions.
Wow.
And I just thought, well, I'm going to get out of here and I'm just going to go haul RVs. So that's what I did in the side. But you can't, the irony is you're hauling around a house, but you can't get in it because it's brand new RV. You're not going to be able to sleep and camp out. I thought you could when I first started. And then, the first trailer, I was like, dude, did you sleep in here? I'm like, yeah. Like, hey, you can't sleep in here. I'm like, oh crap. So like, what's wrong with that? And needless to say, learned really quick out the gate that you can't sleep in the RVs you're delivering. So it was just the backseat of my car. And so literally going from Flying J to Flying J is where I slept every night to park my trailer. And then I just showered at the Flying J's. But the first 6 months, I'd made the decision right into it. Like I can do anything hard because I'd just gone through something hard that I felt like I quit. And I was really mad at how I gave up. So then I thought, I'm going to do this for a year. And I set the objective for 1 year exactly to the day. And I know that's a weird thing to do, but it sucked. It truly sucked. You don't have a cell phone. You don't have any friends and you have inter-reflection.
Yeah.
And that is it. And
dark place to be.
It's the worst. And so 6 months of absolute hating yourself, living in your head about how bad you just embarrassed you, your family, all your friends, and how big of a dork you were, and how come you could have been so cocky, and how could you not listen to the people that you trusted? Why did you never ask your dad or your mom or your uncle, or what was wrong with you? Why were you so derogatory and demeaning to people that you love? Like this whole piece, like that Kubler-Ross cycle of, bargain, denial, anger, bargaining, you know what I mean? That whole thing. I'm living this cycle.
You're doing that once an hour.
Once every hour at least. And so, you lay down and you just freaking cry and you're like, why am I such a loser? And I wanted to go through it. As weird as that sounds, like I wanted to beat myself up. Like I wanted to get through the whole healing process of just brutal, like introspective, like I don't even know the right word, but whatever the word is, it's that one. The weird part is it was almost like 6 months on the day that everything flipped. And I was like, I realized after I'd gone through that whole healing process of hatred to me and myself and all the things that I'd done wrong and wronged people and all the things, I became my own best friend. And then I forgave myself. I'm like, look, dude, just this learning, and then I tried to say, what are all the things I learned? And then if I was to do it again, what could I do differently to make sure that I wouldn't ever do those same mistakes? And so I spent the next 6 months actually enjoying the heck out of it, driving all over the place to really just finding happiness in me, which was weird. And then after that, by the way, didn't really date during that period. And then I thought, I don't even need to. I don't even need a friend because I don't know if I'm going to like anybody as much as I like myself, which is a really weird spot to be, by the way.
Not in a weird way.
And not in a weird way, but it's like I'm so at peace with who I am and my failures and stuff that whatever I do. And it was an awfully young age to try to learn. And I think the secret to life is the sooner you can not give 2 flying craps what anybody thinks about you, the sooner you can find happiness in yourself. Like if you're only trying to impress yourself and not care at all what anybody else thinks about you, and I mean sincerely care about yourself. I don't mean like not care about what other people think because you're being a dickhead and you just want everybody to not care. Like, screw you, I don't care. It's not that kind of I don't care what you think about me. It's like I'm just so confident with who I am that you can say I'm ugly and fat and a loser and bankrupt and broke, whatever. You can say all those things. I'm like, yeah, probably all of them. I am. I can be, for sure. I can be all those things, for sure.
But I love myself.
But I love it. And I'll tell you what, I'm so thankful that I went through those pieces that I highly encourage you to do it. Because then you won't have to come at me and judge me because you won't even have space. You're going to be so busy understanding that we make mistakes and that those mistakes are what builds us, and what builds us makes us better. And then when we're better, we can help other people be better.
Yeah. So you get to this point where you're like really happy with your life, whatever happens. How do you decide what's next?
So awesome story too. Jason Haskell Homes. So Guy Haskell owned Haskell Homes and his dad.
Sure.
Jason Haskell and now Guy Haskell are partners with Updwell. Amazing family, by the way. Freaking love that family sincerely with all my heart. Jason calls up, friends with my sister, and says, "Hey, by the way, my brother's hiring a superintendent." And he goes, maybe you can go be a superintendent for houses. And I thought, well, you know what? We've done a lot of sheds that had drywall, electrical, plumbing, all the stuff in there. I mean, there's a lot of elaborate sheds that you built. We did masonry on some. We did all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I could do a house. I mean, it's just a big shed, right? Whatever. Yeah. So I went into his office and literally still living in my car, by the way. And I remember showing up. I had like this Hawaii shirt on, shorts and flip flops. And I'm like, well, I'm just here to talk about a superintendent job. And he's like, okay, have you ever built houses before? And I'm like, no. He goes, Jason said you're amazing, but you've never even built a house. I'm like, no, but I've built sheds, garages, all sorts of stuff. Like we did a garage start to finish with plumbing, drywall, and everything in 16 hours. So he came back and he goes, well, all right, I'll take a chance with you and add you as a superintendent and see if we can kind of groom you into the place. And he goes, how much do you need? And I said, 100 grand. Are you crazy? Like 100,000 a year? Don't you live in your car? Like, yeah, I live in my car. What's wrong with that? It doesn't mean that I'm not worth 100,000. He's like, dude, I haven't had anybody ever walk into my office say they need 100 grand a year. I'm like, well, you've never had me. And then he says, hey, this job pays 36,000. I won't get out of my car for 36,000. He goes, do you make 36,000? I'm like, no, I don't make 36,000. I didn't make any money. Like I made hardly any. And by the time I bought diesel and tires, I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But if you want me to do construction, I'm 100 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, that doesn't work. I'm like, okay. So I guess I'll go back left. I'm like, well, that didn't work out. And I didn't have any care. Like I knew what I wanted to be worth. Right.
Yeah.
So he called me the next day and he says, hey, Jeremy, can I talk to you for a second? And I said, sure. He goes, I'm just kind of like dumbfounded. Like you don't even make, like you said, you don't make $500 to $700 a month when you're driving. I'm like, right. He goes, and I just offered you more than triple that. And he goes, but you wanted more than 10 times that. I said, yep, that's 100%. And he goes, well, I'm just confused. Like, do you mind coming back in here and talking to me some more? Like, I'm really intrigued with your mindset. How come you think like this? I'm like, because I know freaking what I can do. Yeah. I go, like, you may have this. I go, you've been telling me that your houses are taking 90 to 120 to 180 days to build. I said, I promise you, after looking at your houses, he'd taken me for a ride. I'm like, I wouldn't be not one of those houses will take me longer than 90 days. Not one. I said, so I have an idea for you. I said, look, what I'll do is I'll go to work and I'm going to do this and I'm going to finish that subdivision that you currently have. I'm going to change all your policies, like cleanup fees, delay fees, like all the things.
Sure.
And I put in these policies. Well, he comes back in and he says, I said, look, if I take 1 second longer, and if I can't finish, I'll finish all those houses that are started. Give me 90 days. And if I don't finish everything that's in the ground and I don't take these new starts that you want me to go and they're not done, then you don't pay me a nickel. I'll do it for free. If I do, you owe me 10,000 a month plus bonuses. I go, look, so I came up with what we called the Superman strategy. So if I could do it in 90 days, 80 days, 7 days, 60 days. And the fastest houses I did were around 45 days start to finish. That's footing, foundation, or X out, everything. And I says, and if I do that, then you're going to pay me, if I do a 45-day house, you're going to pay me a couple dollars a square foot more per house. He goes, all right. Because if you do that, that'll save me on interest anyway. I'll give you all my interest savings. So we made the deal. And then I went to leave his office. I said, all right. And he goes, where are you going? I says, well, I'm going to work. And no money. I'm going on a 90-day no money deal. And he goes, well, hold on. You're going to need a phone and you could probably need some diesel. So here's a check for $500. I'm like, okay. And then we went to work. And by the way, I did get my money and I did go do that for a while. And then after that, I wanted to build. My sister called and asked if I could do her house. And he said that I couldn't do that if I was working for him, which I didn't end up building anyway, but it hit me wrong. I'm like, do you think I'd steal from you? You know, and he's like, well, you know, you use my vendors and there's a risk. I'm like, okay, I quit. Right. And he goes, why would you quit? I'm like, because if you even have an inclination that I would ever steal, we don't have the relationship I thought we had. Like I would never. And he's like, dude, I'm not saying that, but I'm like, I can't even feel that. So I'm out. And then here we go. I just started doing houses.
What made you be able to finish a house that was taking 6 months in a month and a half?
I guess what helped me was in the shed world, you didn't want to go back to a project twice.
Mm.
So high organization skill set. I'm not highly organized, but I did want to minimize losses. And what I did realize when we were first building sheds, like, oh, I forgot these nails. I forgot that. I forgot this. And I have to go to the hardware store. I have to go back to the
Mm.
shop. And I'm like, we had to get really highly organized on everything that's required into that job so we can go once. We were doing snowmaking machines up in Val, Breckenridge. Like we were doing projects everywhere and there's no convenient anything, right?
Yeah.
So being able to come up with the system and I guess the project breakdown well enough, like I didn't understand what a CPM diagram is, like critical path management. I didn't know any of that conversation. I learned it with Haskell's, but I did do it in my own way. Like, okay, let's make sure that we double check everything that we're driving with. Let's make sure we only go there once, because if we go twice, not only do I not get the second, I don't get to install a shed that time, but I'm spending money instead of having the opportunity to make money.
Mm.
So we got really good at that. And then I took those same kind of pieces and I put them all together into the house building process. Like, what are our risks? Like, if I could get everybody organized and they commit to the day, I don't write the day. So I would reach out to you and say, hey, how long does it take to excavate this 1,100 square foot basement? And you said 2 days. Okay, I'll put 2 days on this contract. Yep. Perfect. And so I made people initially, they didn't take it serious until they started getting delay fees. I'm like, well, look, I'm only delaying
The
you
incentives.
$100 for every day that you were wrong on the days you told me, because I told the slab work or the sub rough plumbers to come in when you said you would be out. I gave them the day. Now the sub rough plumbers had to reschedule their day. And this is what happens to construction: is someone doesn't finish on time. The other subcontractor has to move their schedule. They can't come, not tomorrow, but not for another 2 weeks. And then you have a dead project.
Yeah.
So we got really strict on cleanup fees and delay fees. And then I had open conversations. I had a meeting at, I can't remember, some convention center at a hotel, brought all our subcontractors in and said, hey, I'm Jeremy, and this is what I'm going to do. You're going to hate me out the gate, but eventually you'll love me. Once that they saw that it was reciprocal, meaning it wasn't about us, it was truly about the tradesman, and they started seeing delay fee, like, hey, dude, man, that screwed me up. That was my plan for today. And I'm like, yep, I got it. You're not going to be there for 3 days. I'm sending you a check for $300. We're going to charge you $600 and you're going to get your $300.
Nice.
When they saw that it was an equal game, like, we respect and appreciate and understand how this is affecting you. Of course, it would cost a lot more now, I know, I'd assume, but it had a lot of people quit. And then a lot of people stayed, and the people that did stay, it was easy to onboard because they would be able to come in and get out.
Yeah.
And they knew the job was ready.
Why doesn't the whole construction industry run that way?
I think they try. Commercial does a better job of it. Residential doesn't,
I see.
because it's a really relationship side and it's hard to find high skills.
And you ended up back in fire eventually, right?
Yep. So I built the house thing. We did a ton of houses and a lot of earthwork. I got to like 11 dump trucks and 5 excavators and skid steers and mini excavators and graders and dozers. And we were doing a grundle in excess of 20 million again. This time, when we did go bankrupt in this one, second bankruptcy. But what had happened,
collecting the bankruptcies.
collecting the bankruptcies a ton. However, the difference between that second bankruptcy and the first bankruptcy was dynamically different.
Mm.
And the reason is because the second bankruptcy was 100% out of my control.
Mm.
Centennial Bank got shut down. The markets crashed, right? 2007, 2008. Barnes Bank got slammed. They were holding a huge subdivision that I was building in Layton.
Got it.
Millions of dollars in improvements that I put in all the roads, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, sewers, water, hydrants, this whole 26 lot subdivision. Did a bunch of the basements. And then I was doing a bunch of retail centers. And then the banks were just closing down. Like in Barnes and Centennial, we're doing a huge amount of loans here in Davis County, Wasatch Front. And then the banks came in and they get bailed out, but the contractors get left with the bag.
Mm.
I'm like, hold on a second. Like, how are they getting bailed out and I'm not getting any money when all my money's in the subdivision and they're collecting money for the subdivision? Like, how could I get hosed here?
Yeah.
So I can honestly say I have zero remorse about the second one. There was nothing I could do when the funding dries up and the banks are not even cutting the checks for the money that you're owed, and the FDIC shutting them all down. And then people are like, you owe me money. I'm like, don't call me. I don't know you, dick. Like, I don't know you nothing.
Yeah.
You called the freaking bank that the FDIC shut down. I got a contract that had financing, secured financing from the Centennial, or Centennial Barnes, whatever. There were several banks in the game. And I'm like, I did my due diligence. There was funding secured. Like, there's no other due diligence step that I could have taken other than saying you put the money in escrow first. No one's going to do that. So I didn't feel bad about it.
That was 2008.
2000, yeah. And then I filed bankruptcy in 2010. I tried to fight it out. And it was just when Caterpillar shows up, Wheeler Machinery, by the way, they made this card deal. And I don't disagree with them, but they're dirtbags a little bit, like flat out. Really good card players. And I made the wrong decision. So I had about half of my equipment paid for, and the other half was financed. So they came in and they knew, I mean, they were making deals with every excavator. They said, hey, the banks we get it. So, but we don't want you to go bankrupt. Here's the deal we'll make. We'll take all this equipment that's financed and we'll put it on 0%. And then we're going to give you a 6-month pause in payments. I'm like, oh man, you're throwing me a safety net. And then they said, but you have to collateralize that deal with all your paid off equipment. Right. And of course, you're looking for this opportunity. And I'm always the forever optimist. I'm like, this economy is going to change. It'll be way better. I'll get it fixed. This is only going to be a hiccup. It's not going to last 2 and 3 and 4 years like it did, and 5 years and 6 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll do that. So now I went from half my fleet paid for and half of it financed to all of it under a guarantee.
Yeah.
So of course, the 6 months went by and the economy is not changing. And they just started showing up and they took not only all my financed equipment, but they took all of it.
Yeah.
So literally repossessed the proverbial shovel that I'm supposed to dig myself out of the crap hole I just dug. I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, how do you dig yourself out? I don't even have anything. So when Wheeler sued me, I'm like, you guys knew exactly what you were doing. Like, here's the deal. You're trying to cover the note of the other stuff, but you've devalued my used equipment so much that you're overinflating. So long story short, I don't wrong them. I do feel like when the bankruptcy judge talked to them and they're like, hold on a second, this is what you did? Like, yeah, no, sorry. We don't have any remorse for you.
Yeah.
In the long run, it's business and I don't fault them for it.
Yeah.
But after that, immediately I'm like, okay, by the way, in the tail end of excavation, when there's no work, I started doing fire. I'm like, I'm just going to go back to fire and I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to get maybe my degree in paramedics. And so I started doing that. And then I got in and did my degree in paramedics and got a job at Roy City Fire. And that was a lifesaver, really. More than anything, it was like getting back to basics. You had to learn how to live on mac and cheese again. But again, at the same time, I'm like, I can't live at 762 forever. So then I thought, what is the business I could start that I could keep my fire? I had no desire to leave fire. But what could I start that I could get back into big box stores and run it as kind of a fulfillment deal? I could find a manufacturer in Utah and they could just ship it to the big box and I could make some margin off of every piece. And at the time I was trying to build a theater room in my basement. I'm like, I want to make it cool. If I could make a hidden door into the kids' theater room, then it would be cool.
Yeah.
Right. So there was no, as I was getting in trying to find how do you build hidden doors, there was a lot on like Pinterest and on the internet, but there was nobody building it. And then I thought, well, I'll try to make something that works. And using traditional hinges wasn't working, and using different, like a piano hinge didn't work. I'm like, well, what if I did a hinge pin that was the same principle that I could move anywhere on the top and bottom? Now they did have pivot hinges, but they also required mortising, and I didn't have equipment to do that. So if I could make a surface mounted hinge plate, top and bottom of the door, then wherever I put it on the door, I could be left hinged, right hinged. I could be in swing, out swing. It could be a 360 hinge. It could do everything in one hinge. Because I'm who I am, I decided to spend thousands of dollars on trying to figure out how to build the hinge and still got nowhere on my door. Right. Like that was the way it works. So needless to say, patent attorneys and all the steps, like finding a design consultant, a design engineer, and then doing testing, and then finding a machine shop, and then finding a patent attorney, and your freedom to operate, and all the things that it kind of exacerbates into, was the start. Like I was just going to make hinges, by the way. So this was started as a hinge company. Well, it wasn't ever called a hinge company, but it was just Murphy Door and we make hinges. Well, that worked really well. Signed Rockler, which is like a hardware supplier, really fast. And they were doing probably 35,000 the first year. I would say
35,000 units.
dollars.
Okay.
Which is almost equal to what I was making at the fire department.
Okay.
And I have 500% margins on my hardware at the time.
Nice.
So I'm like, wow, this is a great side job. And then I'm like, I'll just keep pumping all the money back in marketing. I just need a little bit of the money. So when I say I never paid myself, that's not true.
Yeah.
When I first did the hinges and we did our first 30,000 the first year, then I did take a little bit out because
your mac and cheese money.
Yeah. So literally, but it was not a very long stint. So after that first year, I was realizing I was getting more and more calls of people that needed the door. They didn't want to build a door, so they didn't need the hinge, but they wanted me to build the door. I'm like, dude, I've never even built the door yet. I still hadn't, by the way, built my theater door.
Yeah.
But I was selling a lot of the hinges. I'm like, well, I guess I'll need to find a cabinet company. And luckily enough, coincidentally enough, my cross the street neighbor is the largest supplier of cabinet automation and CNC equipment in the West Coast, right? So pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I just went across the street. I'm like, do you know any cabinet makers? Now, keep in mind, it's just post-recession. We're still trying to cross.
It's like 2013.
Yeah, 2013. It's still just clawing its way out. He says, yeah, I've got a company in Rigby, Merrill Cabinets, that would love your work. So I went up to Rigby, Idaho, and we worked out a deal, and they helped me design the first like production Murphy doors on something they would build and get it all packaged up. We would screw the hinges on, and then we would ship it, kind of thing. First, they shipped actually, but we did that, and then we got a little busier. They were getting busier, and so we'd go get the boxes and do the other stuff at our office.
Sure.
Well, then they got really busy, started signing apartments as the economies got better. I found another company in Centerville called Trimart. And like I said, Utah's awesome, right? We have some awesome companies. And a Murphy door looks like a bookcase, right? And so by a cabinet maker's mindset, it's just a cabinet that's tall and skinny, and we build it like a cabinet. Well, it's so far from true, right? Because these doors are expected to carry 350 pounds.
Mhm.
They're expected to be slammed. They're expected to stay square. The load on a cabinet is different. It books up in the upper corner over here, and it has an inherent desire to twist just based on what it does. So Trimart helped minimize that. Until we hired our own design engineering department, we didn't have that perfected. And then when we finally hired an actual mechanical engineer and a design engineer, did we see all the fail points? And we had plenty. But now these doors do not twist, they do not sag, they do not, I mean, and not very many cabinet people, even though they look like they can do it when they look at it from the outside, there's not very many cabinet companies that can actually build our door.
Mm.
They just can't, unless they really spend the time to design and engineer the fail points.
Yeah.
So when we first started, I put aside 30% of all earnings to marketing.
Wow.
Which was really hard to do. You know, not like I'm
aggressive.
It's aggressive. Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of making sure that your business can afford to pay you way before you start taking money. Mm-hmm. I'll always have a first-time job or a job that I don't, affect the growth of the company before I take money away. And my rule was it had to be grossing. I've had a lot of comments, by the way. My business had to make $5 million before I left.
Yeah.
I don't have to make $5 million before I leave. My business in this industry for our particular goals and objectives had to do $5 million of gross revenue.
Yeah.
Before I thought that I could come over here and pay myself $50,000 a year with my dental, vision, health, and all the other benefits that I got from the fire department. So when I got to that pace, and by the way, we were pacing $400,000 a month, not that we'd achieved 5 million. I wanted to make sure that I had 3 consecutive months of 400,000 or greater before I pulled the plug and left full-time fire, which was in June of 2016. So then at that point, I knew that I could pay myself the money that I needed to make before, without hurting the business's growth.
Sure.
I'm a firm believer that you're not, and you shouldn't steal 50% of your baby's milk so you can eat. Like your baby needs all the milk so it can grow healthy and strong and be able to fight off sicknesses, which business is going to have. If it doesn't happen the first day, it'll probably happen in the first week or first month or first year for sure. Because I've been bankrupt 2 times in my life, I've learned all the wrong lessons in all the right ways and wrong ways. So I tested all the things to do wrong right out the gate. And now I'm a little bit more calculated. Yeah. First big check when I was first in business is like, yep, I got $35,000 in deposits. Of course you should go buy a brand new truck. It only makes sense. That truck's $35,000. I have $35,000. I might as well just go buy that. And of course you have cost of goods sold and everything else, but you don't know. You just don't understand what you don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Yep. It's a story we've heard almost every episode on this podcast. Like you get to a point about 5 years in where you're like, I think we need to raise prices. Oh, I didn't realize cost of goods sold, taxes, paying employees, benefits. I love this concept of the baby because you don't want to have to decide between writing a check to yourself to pay for groceries and writing a check that's going to accelerate the growth of the business so that 2-3 years down the line, you don't have to think about anything really.
And I think what we underestimate as founders, and like I said, I'm just writing right now that book, The 100 Questions to Ask Yourself Before Starting a Business. We underestimate the time that it takes to get to the point where you're going to be able to take home some money. I also believe that there's a lot of misinformation from other entrepreneurs. And typically, when you're listening to podcasts, they're usually already successful or they're investors already.
Yeah.
So, like if I'm investing in your business, which we've been doing more and more of, is investing in others, like as we go out. But of course, as the investor, I want your 100% attention.
Mm.
I don't want you working a side job. I want you to work 100% of the time. So the question that we always ask, like, whose money do we use to start? Is it going to be friends, families, fools, our savings, our 401k, whatever that is? The more you can self-fund, the less obligation you have to the investor to give 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So because I tested those other waters before, I'm like, I knew that I did not want to do that because they're only going to have a fixed amount of investment they're wanting to put in initially till they start to see a return. Unless it's a wise investor that gets, they may have to put more. But ultimately, you're just going to get pressure to work 8 hours, then 12 hours, then 17 hours, and then 5 days, and 6 days, and 7 days. Like you're just going to have to work all the time till I see my return. Or I should say, you better write yourself some checks back to the business because I'm not giving any more money and I still want a return.
Yeah.
So as I look at businesses to invest in, or and by the way, that's starting our own businesses too, right? Because we're investing in ourselves and our business. It's like, am I willing to work more than 5 days a week, more than 8 hours a day to see this dream get off the ground? And am I willing to do 7 days a week, 17, 18, 19 hours a day, which I did for a long time. And that kind of takes me back to the Roy story. When I left, I was working. My wife came into the house, and this is when I was working for Roy Fire.
Yeah.
She said, "Hey, by the way," no one said hi. Like I got back from my Kentucky office, I had my luggage, and the only person in the whole, and I say this person in jest, but that said hi to me was my dog. Came running up and wagging his tail, but no one else took their ear pods out. No one said hello. My wife's mopping the floor. I'm like, well, hello, aren't you guys gonna have like a party? Because I'm here. And they're like, my wife pulled her ear pod out. And she's like, well, if you want attention and you want people to say hi and you want to be a dad, then be one. You've been gone 520 hours this month. Like you have been working. And I'm like, no, I'm keeping track of that. And sure as heck, she did. She brought out her journal and she wrote down all the hours I worked every single day. I'm like, holy crap. And she, by the way, it had been for years. She goes, you work at Leighton Fire, you work at Roy Fire, you're doing concrete, you're doing tile, you're doing every side job on the planet, and you're doing Murphy Door. Like, when does the family become a priority? Which we can get into a whole other topic on work-life balance. But at the same time, it woke me up a little bit. I'm like, okay, I did make a commitment of $400,000 a month, and we have trended that for the last 90 or 180 days or something. I guess it is time to just pull one of the patches. And I quit the fire department the next day, post a conversation with my chief that made a lot of sense. So I left, which was probably still the hardest thing because I still love that. It's my favorite job I've ever had, hands down.
And that conversation with your chief was the kind of solar system.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy one? It's a beautiful story. Yeah.
Can you tell it? Yeah.
So Chief Polson at the time, wonderful person as a human, not my favorite chief, but he was great and he's very smart and he's raised some amazing kids. But he brought out 3 rocks and he set them on the driveway. He said, hey, this is Jeremy's universe. He put a big, huge rock. When I say big, huge, softball size rock out. He said, this is you and your family. This is your universe. The next rock was like half that size. He goes, that's Murphy Door. And then he put this little teeny pebble and he goes, this is Roy Fire. And he says, because Roy Fire is, 48 on, or excuse me, 24 on, 24 off for 4 days. And then you have 4 days off and then you do it again. And then you have 6 days. So it's called the modified Kelly schedule at the time. He goes, they depict where you have to be when you have to be. And these other things are just, they get the secondary process or time that's left. And it works this way. And he goes, so basically every minute that you steal to work extra hours at the fire department or extra hours at Murphy Door comes from the heaviest, most important part, center of your universe. And he goes, and if you don't redirect that and put it to the center on the heavyweight and work backwards, then that you can't have a solar system spin without it throwing the weight of your family. And unfortunately, your family is going to be the thing that suffers and gets thrown out of your universe. So those were all kind of congruent. You got a frustrated wife, which was a verbal explanation of how my weight is going to be tossed out the window tomorrow if I don't fix some stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other side was okay, yeah, Roy Fire's the least paying. And again, it was like that. I used that aluminum safety blanket, like those emergency blankets you
Sure.
can buy for $2 to survive a ice storm or whatever. It offered me health insurance and it offered me dental and vacation and some safety nets, but the paychecks weren't great. But the feeling of the family and what you were doing felt great.
Yeah.
So you were kind of torn between, does money really matter?
Mm.
Which I can argue that it doesn't. It's not as important as you think it is. And you hear that from every rich person. I get that.
Yeah.
But it truly is not. Like,
Yeah.
I would just wish I could teach people in some magic way that money is superficial and it feels like it's the solution, but it's far from.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But it took me to figure that out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. You kind of have to make it before you can
can
say that
feel
with
it.
conviction.
Yeah, and have people, of course, everybody's on the inside. What a dick. Like, if I
Yeah.
only could say that. I get it. I understand. I've been
Yeah.
in your shoes. I get that.
Kind of round out the moral of the story on the solar system thing. If Roy Fire, which is the smallest pebble, is in the middle, meaning it's the sun, and all the other planets are rotating around it, it doesn't have enough emotional weight and like
To hold the rest of space
spiritual
together.
significance to you to hold the rest
Yeah.
in rotation there.
It's true. And
Yeah.
you know, that in some people that is, but ultimately, regardless, no matter how we look at it, the family core unit, whether you're married or it's your immediate family or whatever, should stay your core. Like, that's really what this all is about.
Mm.
You know, is just your family, immediate, direct, or whatever, or close friends, or whatever you call your family. That really is what all this is about. I mean, here's a good example: going on vacation to an elaborate, beautiful place. And we've had the fortunate opportunity to do a lot of those. And I've had the opportunity to go by myself too. I can tell you it sucks by yourself because you're like, you can't come back and share stories and, hey, do you remember this? And
Yeah.
you know that? And you remember that awesome beach? And then how awesome, you know, I mean, like, did you remember when we were scuba diving? You saw that? There's no one to share it with.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's pretty numb. And so there's always somebody of significance that should be with you. And none of anything that you do on the daily basis is as important as if you have the opportunity to share it with somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever that choice of that person is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a huge awakening for me. But again, all of this, we try to shorten down when we say we want to start our business. And we say, hey, look, we want to go to work and I want to be self-employed and I'm going to make money and I can have more home time. The unfortunate piece is the more home time is 5 or 10 years later. We just think we can go from this to that and be free. And it's so different. Maybe the first little while you're building it, it feels that way. But as you're starting to build the superstructure of your enterprise, you know, you're excavating it out and you're putting your footings down and your foundation down and you're really trying to work on that structure. It ends up becoming a lot more than you expect every time. I always tell my guys, it always costs at least twice as much and takes twice as long as you think. But I believe in entrepreneurship. It's way, way longer and way, way more. And it's way longer because everything costs more than you think. And so if it's twice as much times all the different elements of a company, right, it's a lot more.
Yeah.
And we underestimate it by a significant amount. And I think you just have to be ready. And I'm not trying to discourage anyone. You know, we are fortunate in the state of Utah, right? I mean, that we have great entrepreneurial ideas and we have great concepts and we have great companies. But I also feel like in the state of Utah, we also have a lot of pride.
Mm.
It's everywhere, but here we have a lot of pride. We're proud in our state. We're proud in what we do. We're proud in our religion. We're proud in all the stuff. Like, so what that does when we're prideful is we fear getting the proper advice from the right mentors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And which then kind of handicaps the opportunity to learn and shortcut the startup phase. I would encourage that to find a mentor before you start. It's never wrong.
Yeah.
Like to really say, hey, what does this look like? What could this do? What could I expect? And really don't discredit the experience that's hard. That's my problem. I'm like, do you know why? I'll tell you why you screwed that up, because you're dumb. I'm way smarter than you are, and you just aren't that smart. That's why I can do it without that failure. You know, that's my instinct, right?
Yeah.
And I found out that I was way dumber than they were. I'm way dumber. I'm not as smart as I believed I was. I'm not as good as I thought I was. But I do have one thing that I'm pretty darn good at, and that's I just don't freaking quit.
Yeah.
And 20-hour work days for months don't matter. Like I can really do that. That's one thing. There's a saying that everybody has a dream. Most of us believe we have the motivation, but very few of us have the discipline. We think we do, But when it comes down to like, don't watch the sports game, don't go with your friends, don't go on the trip to Lake Powell, even though it's 100% paid for, like all the things, we aren't disciplined enough to say, I can't. I have this other goal that is bigger, greater, that'll free up some time. You
Yeah.
know,
And like you said, it's not that you can't go to Lake Powell. It's just probably going to be 5 to 10 years from now.
right.
That's the right time to take it.
Right. I said, hey, look, the work-life balance concept, like a lot of us, I think, visually feel that work-life balance is a plank, like we're trying to balance a plank out. And 8 hours of work and 8 hours with our kids and 8 hours of sleep would be the perfect plank per, I guess, per se in a beautiful day. Right. But ultimately, there's a lot of people that spend 8 hours a day at work and 8 hours at home. And if they're lucky, 40-hour work weeks, like some want 30, but I mean, let's just pretend they're 40 and others do more. But if we want to do that, then more than likely we'll spend a 30-year career and then still probably have to go past that to still pay our bills with inflation and all the other stuff that comes on in the large majority of the US population, right? So I've always had a different perception of work-life balance, that it wasn't a plank, that it was a wheel, right? Or a piece of pie. And I thought, well, if I loaded all my hours into a smaller section, then it'll free up the backside. So I could say, hey, for simple math, a 40-hour work week for 30 years is 62,400 hours, right? So in my head, it's like, if I do 62,400 hours in 10 years, I can earn the same as if I did 30 years at that wage, right? So I'm like 17 hours a day times 10 years equals 62,400 hours. So I'll just do that. You know, principally it works if you're making the same revenue all those hours.
Sure.
The other thing that you don't realize is the opportunity for compound interest in the extra 20 years that you did that.
Exactly.
So ultimately, when people say, how can I be a millionaire? I'm like, all you need is to find a job that pays you $27 an hour and you work 17 hours a day for 7 days a week for 10 years, and you've got $1.5 million in the bank, plus you're going to have compound interest for the next 20 years. You'll be worth $6-7 million in 30 years when your buddy's still having to go to work at Walmart pushing buggies. Like, and that's not demeaning. I'm not trying to say that. It's just not very many people have that discipline.
Yeah.
If you want to keep rolling, right? Because you got 20 more years to build a career. Well, at the same time, you know, to try to kind of bring that story up, the way I looked at it is I'm going to put all my hours in. And then, you know, I've had my mother, by the way. I love her to death. She's the best mother. You're the best. Always has been. But she is firm about, like, you need to be home with your kids more. You need to balance this out. Like, you're missing everything. And so I look at it as, look, right now, if I know this is sacrificial and we all have different opinions and there's no right, wrong. It's just individual. If we can give them everything we possibly can in the hours that we can give it and include them in a lot of the process, they'll learn from that. But at the same time, if I do a really good job, then I can be done. Well, I could be done now. Like, I could just unplug it and we don't ever have to work again. And I told my wife, if I do a good job, then me and our kids can live a really comfortable life till we die. And we could be done at 50 and it'll work out great. Or if I do a great job, then me, my kids, and their kids can be pretty safe if they're disciplined. But if I do an excellent job, then me, my kids, their kids, and their kids could do that and build generationally. So the idea of like, hey, don't you want to spend time with your kids? Is like, well, I guess if I, you know, when they're ready and when our grandkids are, they're like literally unplug and I have 30 years to go do whatever I want. So ultimately, if you do it that way, the free time you end up with is significantly greater if you choose to do that. It's always an argument. I'm like, Mom, do you realize, like, today I could sell and then never work again, but I would make me crazy because I just love I love the game. I love the challenge. So we went to kind of explain our growth. We did 30,000. And then we did about 100, I think it was 109,000 the next year. And then we did 1.5 million. And then that was the door pickup. And then we did 2.2 million. And then we did 3.7. And then it was like 5 point whatever. And then 7.9. And we went into COVID at 7.9 million.
And then things just went crazy.
COVID happened. And then in 2021, we did 14. And then we did 25. And then we did 30 something. And then this year we'll do 56.
And the next stop's 109, right?
109. Dude, hey, wait, dude, this guy is freaking rocking. I made a couple of real estate transactions and I've made a significant amount of money in real estate without knowing anything about real estate. And it was because I had the opportunity to buy the old BMC West complex down on 1900 West. And so I went home and I was looking on YouTube, like, how do I buy a building with no money? Right. So I was able to find this loud, pompous dude on YouTube that talked about how they could sell houses, or they were buying these buildings and then they were taking the rent roll and then they were financing the rent roll based off of a cap rate, right? Which was all Chinese. I'm like, what in the world is he talking about? And so I spent a lot of time watching it. So I wonder if these buildings are pretty well empty and BMC West is there, but they only wanted a little piece. I'm going to go down there and say, hey, I wonder if I could go put an offer in and then ask them while I'm doing my closing documents through SBA. I need 120 days. I didn't know how SBA worked. I'm like, I asked for a 120-day close period, right? And they said, that's long. And I'm like, I know, but it's SBA. It's not my world. And they said, sure. And I'm like, I only need a part of this property. I don't need all of it. So do you mind if while I'm under contract that I have a for lease sign and try to get the property leased? And they go, well, you're going to lease our building. I'm like, well, of course it doesn't count. If I can't close the building, then it's your leases if you decide to just rent them to the people that want to rent it. Or you can, if I close, then they're mine. Or you can tell them to pound sand, and I'll let all my future tenants know that if I don't close, you're at risk of the decision of BMC West to let you come in. So the irony is, while they were buying BMC West, BFS, Builders First Source, bought BMC West out during this transitional period, which was weird. So all of a sudden they wanted more space. I'm like, okay, that works. And then immediately I got the railroad to lease some, and then LKL leased some. So I'm like, okay, with my rent plus BMC West rent plus LKL's rent plus this, I took that number and spun it. And I'm like, okay, so what's the cap rate at this? Well, it was trading at like 5.5 cap. So 5.5% interest on your monthly revenue, or annual net operating income is what it is. Which, by the way, I learned all from Grant. Like
On a YouTube video.
On YouTube videos. Now, a lot of YouTube videos. I just was like, okay, how does this work? And I was trying to reverse engineer this game. So I bought that property for $2.9 million. I was out of my own personal pocket with all my costs, about 50 grand. I got an appraisal on it that appraised at 17.8 million. I just got it. We just refinanced it at Golden West. We closed 2 weeks ago. So it was about 60 days ago we got the appraisal. Wow. 17.8 million.
Wow.
So if you want to do the math simply for me, I put 50,000 in and I picked up 15 million. It's pretty good ROI. It's like, hey, look, if I was to give you 50 grand and you want to bring me back $15 million in 5 years, you probably do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's pretty good. So then I did the same exact thing on this property here. So this property was initially asking, I think, 10 million. And then they came down. It sat here empty, and there was homeless people living in here. It was a crap hole. Like this was a terrible, awful mess. 1,200 desks and chairs through here, homeless people and pizzas, and it was deteriorating. It was rotten. And so I got them negotiated down to 2.9 million. And then I found some issues that they didn't disclose. So I credited us another 600,000. So I got this property for it was 3 million. I got it for 2.4 million.
Wow.
So this one came in and appraised at 16.8. That one appraised at 17.8. This was 16.9.
Yes. So these are your first two commercial real estate deals?
Those were my first two commercial real estate deals. Now I have others, but yeah. So in the long story short, I'd put another $1.5 million into this property, and it picked me up. So let's call it 4 million all in, and picked up 12.8, and the other one picked up 15. So in just since 2018, I've netted 28 million in these two buildings. And this one, by the way, no money, because I got it all leased up. We got the Air Force right out. Literally the next day, after I convinced Convergys to put the for lease sign, I got the Air Force to come and tie in. Nice. And then I got Terracon Environmental. I'm like, oh, great. So I go to the bank. I'm like, hey, this is what the lease rates are. What are you willing to finance? Boom, boom, boom. And you got money off the table.
Yeah.
Worked awesome. So anyhow, at that point, I'd never paid Grant Cardone any money, but I'd made a lot. I'm like, man, I probably ought to go give that guy a little thanks. And I saw the little advertisement for a real estate summit. It was awesome. Like, I'm like, there's so much more to real estate that I didn't know. I was just watching his free stuff. We wait till you pay a little bit of money and learn some real stuff. And by the way, and Grant, love you, but let me tell you something. And he knows the story. I'm like, I could not stand this loud, pompous ass at all. Like every time I watch him on YouTube, I'm like, I cannot stand this jackwagon at all. He's so freaking cocky. I'm sick of hearing about your stupid jack. I love your jack. I'm just saying, I can't stand hearing about it. like, I don't need this. So when I went down there, I'm like, I'm just going to go in and he had free seats because he's awesome that way. But then you had the executive seats and then you have your whatever.
Yeah.
So I paid like the $2,500 seats. I'm like, I'm going to give him some money just for whatever reason, but I don't want to listen to anything else. I feel like I need to donate a little bit back because I've made a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was walking out and then I was walking down the street in Scottsdale and Grant walks up to me and he goes, dude, freaking cool hat. And I believe he thought it was a 10X hat.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, Murphy door. I got 2 Murphy doors, no freaking hats, bro. And I'm like, he didn't say it like that. It was a little more flagrant. And he goes, I'm like, well, dude, I'll get you a hat. Like, that's no big deal. He goes, I'm just messing with you. And he walks away. Well, Jared Glant comes running up to me and he goes, hey, dude, Grant really does want a hat. I'm like, well, dude, I'll get him a hat. He goes, hey, give me your phone number.
And Jared's like Grant's right-hand guy.
He's the president of all of Cardone's groups. So he runs Grant's businesses, right? The guy's a freaking genius at 30 some odd years old. Jared Glant is a freaking genius. Okay. I get it. Like, I understand why he's running a $5.5 billion firm for Grant. 30 minutes later, he had a text. Hey, want to come up and have a drink with us and some hors d'oeuvres up here? I'm like, yeah, well, sure. I get upstairs and there's Brandon Dawson, Grant, Jared, and some dude that owned the Del Mar racetrack. I'm like, how the frick am I here? Well, we spent 5.5 hours later. I'm shit-faced, pardon. I'm freaking wiped out. I'm like, what happened? And he goes, you want to smoke a cigar? I'm like, sure. I don't smoke cigars, but I mean, I guess if I'm hanging out with you guys, sure. Well, it's raining. We're sitting there and just laughing. He's telling me stories. And I let him know my story about why I felt like I was obligated to give him tickets or buy tickets. And he's like, hey, you want to come on stage tomorrow? And I'm like, what? So this is a funny story. I know this is going to take us to the next step. So I'm like, yeah, well, in the meantime, my wife FaceTimes me and we're sitting up there. She was like, why are you at a hotel that's not your hotel at 11:30 at night? Well, Grant grabs it, or Brandon Dawson grabs a hold of the phone, and Grant and everybody's in the phone and he's like, hey, listen, sweetheart, there's no girls here. Like, we're just up here. It's raining. We're having a couple drinks and a cigar. And he walks the phone around the whole president's suite at the Phoenician. Anyway, the next day I get called on stage, and this was the most embarrassing moment that I think has ever, I mean, there was probably 2,500-ish people there. And he gets me up on this stage thing and I'm telling my story and I'm like, okay, well, I own Murphy Door and we do X and I own this and I have $30 million in profits from real estate, like whatever the game is. And we've got another hotel project up in Manila that we're building. But I'm like, this is how much money I make. Well, my phone rings. Well, Grant has no quos. He answers my phone. Like, I met this guy yesterday. He's like, what's up? He's like, hey, this is air. And he puts the lapel on speaker. He's like, hey, this is aircraft calculator, right? So they do estimations on cost to run your jets, right? Sure. He's like, your credit card declined for $259. And he's like, I'm on stage telling me about money I have to all these people. And Grant's like, oh yeah? He's like, hey, you sound like the 10X guy. Yeah. He's like, no, what are you saying? That all us Louisiana boys sound the same? Man, I don't even know who you're talking about, right? Yeah. And I'm like, he's like, sir, like, do you want to renew it? He's like, listen, I'm broke. I'm broke. And like, yeah, I really want the calculator because I love my airplane. And, but I really need to negotiate some terms on this $259. Is this really happening for real? Mm-hmm. Anyway, at the end of the deal, he tosses me the phone. He goes, your freaking bills, bro. The guy gets off the phone. I go, hello. He goes, who is this? I go, it's Jeremy. He goes, who is that? I'm like, that was Grant Cardone. He goes, oh my gosh, I knew that's who it was. And I go, what's going on? He goes, well, your credit card's expired. I'm like, why didn't you say that on freaking mic? Can't you just say my credit card's expired on the mic to the world? Like, now I'm humiliated. There was cameras everywhere. So long story short, at that point, he made me realize how piss poor of a salesman I was. So Brandon Dawson, and he's the one that's been in that deal with Gary Brecka. He brought up a couple points. One, Grant's a huge sales piece. Brandon's huge structure, systems piece. Yeah. Brandon's like, hey, look, he asked me a few questions and he says, hey, why don't you do the business summit? It's $40,000. I'm like, dude, 40 grand for what? He goes, you got 3 days. I'm like, you're smoking crack cocaine. I'll not pay you 40 grand for nothing. Mm-hmm. He's like, how about if I ask you 2 questions? And if it doesn't make you $40,000, I'll give you $40,000. I'm like, okay. Bet. Done. And then he asked me 2 questions and he goes, at the same time, it was hardware. And Grant's like, what's the cheapest thing you sell? And I go, it's my hinges. They're $149 a piece. He goes, how many do you sell? I sell about 3,000 hinges a month. He goes, all right. So 3,000 people a month tell you that they're building a hidden Murphy door and you're not building it. I'm like, yeah. He goes, how many people, those people do you call? I go, well, none of them. Why would you call them? Like, they're just buying a hand. He goes, we give away free freaking books to find out what vertical they're interested in, and then we can market programs inside those verticals. You're selling, people are paying you $150 to tell you you're not building their door. And you're wondering why. He goes, I can tell you why. Because they can't find what they're looking for on your website. But you build everything, you'll do whatever people want, whenever they want, wherever they want, however they want. That's your building. That's what we do here.
Yeah.
He goes, but your website doesn't show that. I'm like, I can't show that on a website. Like it's forever long. So he goes, how much does that make? He goes, what's your average ticket? I said, 2,100. He goes, all right, so let's call it 10% of that 3,000 units buys a door from you that you call. That's 300 times 2,100. There's 60,000. Do we want to keep going? I'm like, a month.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So when I signed with, I said, okay, let's do that. Well, last year, I sent my team down to Grant Cardone, and I put him in sales training. And then I put him in through like sales essentials. I signed up for Cardone U, and he put together the sales team. Well, they added 42% to the top line.
Wow.
And I can tell you this, they go down to their sales training, they come, and keep in mind, it was like 20 some odd million. And then all of a sudden, boom. So we were flat, and we ended up closing the year with 20-ish% growth.
And that was the hinges thing, but you also started doing
outbound sales. We'd never had a salesman when we grew to where we were. And this year we just had our daily or our weekly deal in there. 52% of our top line.
Wow.
52% of our top line is outbound. And our growth rate, so we closed the year last year, I want to say it's in the, I'm not 100%, but it's like 30 to 34 million or something. And right now trending to 56 million. I think last year Murphy Door spent 750,000 with Cardone Group, which is a lot of money. But keep in mind, we picked up 20.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Like, how do you beat that in a 12-month period?
Yeah.
Right. I will give you 750 grand every single day if you want to bring me back 20 million.
Yeah.
Every day. They gave us the execution plan. I'm not really great on, I didn't understand goals, benchmarking.
Sure.
I didn't understand that. So I hired Randy Watt, who's the old Ogden City police chief. So you can have the plan, but then how do you benchmark? How do you hold people accountable? How do you make roles and requirements for a weekly cadence kind of meeting, and to see if you're hitting or achieving your objective on a weekly basis, to make sure that what you do today achieves the week, what you do this week achieves the month, and what the month does the year. Really hard, right? But kind of in my story where you go that I'm trying to write right now, when I first heard, Stephen R. Covey in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he mentions begin with the end in mind, which when you're starting a business sounds like the stupidest thing you've ever heard. Like, really? I don't even know how to start, let alone you want me to finish it.
Yeah.
Like in retrospect now, it's like, what is your end objective? Like, is this a legacy business that you want your kids to have? Is this an exit strategy that you want to sell to private equity or a strategic partner? Like, I didn't understand that. But what it really took me till I was freaking 49 years old to understand it. I'm not kidding you. Like, that's how dumb I get sometimes. I'm like, I don't understand this begin with end in mind business, but now I do, because this mission has drawn out this. Right now on our platform, we're trending to by 2034 will be 1.187 billion. If we march the plan. And by the way, we're beating their plan. They have it planned out at 48 million for this year, and we're ahead of their platform.
Love it. I'd love to hear 3 Utah businesses that you personally love. Could be a founder, could be a restaurant, could be whatever, that you feel like this place makes Utah worth living in.
Well, first off, it's really hard because there's so many amazing entrepreneurs here.
Yeah.
And there's so much unique mindset and what they think. Like, it seems like wherever we travel in the world, they're like, oh, you're from Utah. You guys are so creative. How come all the smart people live in Utah? What is it that they're brewing in the water in Utah? And I'm saying that with all sincerity. Like, it doesn't matter. I was in Dubai 2 weeks ago, and they're like, dude, Utah, man, there's so many good products coming out of Utah. I have some personal favorites just simply because I've had a little hand in it. And by the way, some of them aren't good hands. Like, I told Hayden Wadsworth how stupid Hydrojug was. Like, his dad was my captain at the fire station. He's like, hey, will you talk to my son? That was embarrassing. Good for Hayden. He's an amazing entrepreneur and his product's amazing. So Hydrojug for sure.
Nice.
I was at a volleyball tournament all weekend, and it was, I just loved seeing all the moms carrying these Hydrojugs everywhere. I'm that dumb, but that's
Yeah.
okay. I'm proud of him. So when I say, is he one of my favorites? For sure. My favorite, I'm going to use a restaurant because there's a place that I go to, hands down, Tona Sushi in Ogden. Like Tony and Tina are freaking awesome. I love their food. They're so consistent. And I've had the president of Discovery Networks with me, and I've brought him, well, that was Scripps Network at the time, to Tona's. And he's like, where he did he's over the Cooking Channel, the Food Network. He's like, never in my life would I have ever said that my favorite sushi is in Ogden, Utah. Like, that is crazy. Right? This guy
Hey, man.
travels the world to eat.
Yeah.
And he's like, I am in the raspberry cheesecake. I'm like, just try this. And he's like, oh my gosh. We have a signed agreement with the largest entertainer in the state of Utah that's coming out with a collection of products from us.
Wow.
So yeah, that's a fun one.
Huge.
We've got a lot of others. So we've been in this weird space.
Entertaining some powerful people.
Entertaining. So when I get the opportunity to bring them to to that restaurant, it makes me feel good for us here that we don't have to be in California to eat great sushi, or Miami. You can have it here in Ogden. I've been lucky enough to be taught a lot by great entrepreneurs. I think the true core of most of the true entrepreneurs in the state of Utah are doing it for the right reasons. They're not in there to be selfishly, enriched by their interpersonal desires. They have a true desire to make things better, people better, offer better everything for the community. And, between software and products, like, we have a holy grail of awesome systems here. I'm treading lightly because I have so many friends that have so many great businesses that it's a kind of loaded question.
Yeah.
Do I dare dance? I don't know if I dare answer the last one. Is it fair if I?
Yeah, you just leave that up. It's all your friends' businesses.
Dance around, because I'm like, oh crap! Like, I'm going to get cornered at why did you not leave my? And if I kind of can give a cliffhanger, and yes, it was you. It was you. It was yours. It's my favorite one. 100%.
This guy has too many friends.
I'm going to add Golden West Credit Union right now as probably my favorite third business, because that keeps me safe.
Love it.
How about that? Golden West Credit Unions for UtahPreneur people. Don't give Kerry Wallen a run. He's a listener. And I think that is the step. And that saves me from truly all the real entrepreneurs.
Beautiful. I love it. Jeremy Barker, ladies and gentlemen, that was awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you a lot. Thanks for coming in your time.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Jeremy Barker of Murphy Door. If you haven't heard last week's episode with Vanessa Quigley of Chatbooks, you're going to love it. An amazing story. 8 figures in annual revenue built by a husband and wife on one of the most simple ideas I've ever heard. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. And as always, follow us on social media. Links are always in the description. See you next week.